Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an upcoming major Christmas winter storm for portions of the North Central, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. We're going to be going over a bunch of different parameters with the storm. We're going to look at what the models are showing for snowfall, rainfall, wind speeds, and a whole lot more, so make sure that you are staying tuned all the way until the end. We're going to have a lot of heavy snow with this storm, as well as potentially some very cold temperatures behind this storm. Potentially we could get some below zero readings in portions of the upper Great Lakes and also into the interior Northeast. So we're going to be going over all of that and more in today's video, including my personal snowfall forecast for the North Central and the Northwestern United States, not including the Great Lakes and the Northeast for today's video, just because it's a little bit too far, and probably by tomorrow's video we'll have that forecast out for you guys. So definitely, if you have any comments or you want your question answered, leave a comment down below and I will be getting back to you within about an hour or two of you posting it, and usually I do respond even before that time period. So definitely, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and definitely we do have quite a bit of warnings and advisories in place. We have some winter weather advisories and some winter storm warnings in effect for portions of Oregon and Washington, as well as for portions of Wyoming. We have a whole bunch of winter weather related advisories and warnings for portions of western Alaska there. You guys have a storm in that area that is bringing quite a bit of snow for the western half of Alaska. We also see some high wind watches and some high wind warnings in effect for portions of Montana and Wyoming, as well as some wind advisories for portions of California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, as well as for another area in the north central U.S. and the southern Appalachians. We see some winter weather advisories and some winter storm warnings for portions of Pennsylvania and West Virginia there, as well as some avalanche warnings in effect for portions of Idaho, Oregon, and Montana, and some avalanche watches in effect for portions of northwestern Montana. And then we have some winter storm watches in effect for portions of Minnesota and North Dakota. So let's start talking about what the models are showing with the storm. The models actually are in fairly good agreement with what's going to happen. So I'm only going to show the GFS for the precipitation type, but we're going to look at the European for a whole different slew of parameters there, including some of your wind speeds, your snowfall. We're going to look at the European for that as well. Just because they're so similar, I don't think it's necessary for us to go in full depth over both of the models. So here is the current GFS model, and we're looking at this low pressure up in the north central United States that's going to be bringing snow on the northwestern side of that storm. This system is going to continue and stay to your north, but what's going to really drive some of that snow is going to be a very cold air mass that's actually right now behind the system right over here. And that's going to be pushing its way further and further to the east. As we get this high pressure out of the way, this is going to allow room for some room for the system to move up into portions of southern Canada, bring along a very sharp cold front that'll bring some snowfall a little bit to the west of that cold front. So definitely we have a very dynamic system, and there will be a lot of moving parts of the system. So don't be surprised if the models do start shifting a little bit as we get closer to this event. Now here would be by Wednesday morning, and we're looking at very gusty winds, and these are going to be very gusty winds, probably closer to 40 or 50 miles per hour in some cases, because you can see these isobars are very tightly packed together, and when you get that usually means that you have some gusty winds. In this case, you're going to have strong southerly winds ahead of this and then strong northerly winds behind it. That's going to drop your temperatures behind the system. It's going to raise your temperatures ahead of the system. So definitely you will have a fairly warm and actually fairly mild Thursday and Wednesday and Thursday, but then on Friday for a lot of these areas, Thursday night into Friday, you're going to get very cold for a lot of these areas. So we start to see a front setup on the GFS model by Wednesday morning, right around 6 a.m. Central Time. We're looking at a front starting to set up, and when you actually see these isobars kind of go like this in a V shape, that usually means that you do have convective activity along that, or at least you have some sort of convective activity that could occur over these regions. And then we see that snow off further to the north and to the west of that low pressure system, and you might even see close to 4 to 6 inches of snowfall in some of these cases. Now again, look at those strong winds coming out of the south. That's going to really warm up your temperatures, but then again you have those very strong winds on the northern side of the system that's going to be bringing in some very cold air on the backside. So with so much with such a dynamic system, this is going to really be able to strengthen quite well. well. And as we continue this forward, you start to see that by Wednesday evening, that system is moving eastward. You start to see a front setup with that V shape in the isobars, where you're looking at a very strong line of convective activity. We see some of that warmer air ahead of there. Again, on that backside, you're going to see some very, very cold air, maybe closer to the 0 degree mark for a lot of areas in Minnesota, South Dakota, and North Dakota there. And then as we continue forward, you start to see that by Thursday morning, we are looking at a line of potentially strong snow or heavy snowfall moving through portions of Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and that region. It is going to be a very narrow band that's going to take about an hour or two to push out, but you could definitely see maybe 1 or 2 inches of accumulation within that time period. But I think it will probably stay fairly dry if you do live west of there throughout this region. I'm not anticipating any major snow for these areas. Maybe you could see a couple of flurries, but it's going to be very, very brief. If you live west of about west of about central Indiana, I think you don't have too good of a shot of seeing any snowfall out of this. Now, here would be by Thursday morning, which would be Christmas Eve in the morning, and then we're looking at that snowfall expanding as the system starts to slow down and that trough starts to really pick up in speed. We're looking at that trough still digging down a little bit like that, but it's still going to be very, very warm on Thursday for these areas along the coast, where you're going to see temperatures potentially getting up into the 50s and 60s as you get further south. So definitely a very, very warm environment. But then again, behind this, we're looking at temperatures in the teens and the 20s and even the single digits for some of these areas. So behind the system, we definitely have a plenty of cold air, and you could potentially go from let's say 50 degrees to maybe 20 degrees in a matter of 3 hours. So it's definitely, even if you don't see snowfall out of this, what's going to be the biggest issue is going to be that rain refreezing as we get some of those colder temperatures to just rush in to this storm. So as we continue this forward, you start to see that by Thursday night, and then getting into Christmas morning, we're seeing some rain-snow transition on that back end. I don't know how much mixing you will be able to get. I think more of that snowfall, if you live over portions of the coastal Northeast, will probably come in the form of lake effect behind the system, which you actually see for Christmas. I would say Christmas early afternoon, where you're looking at potentially some lake effect getting all the way down to the coast. Now, here's what the European model is showing for snowfall. That was the GFS model that we just showed you, but here's what the European model is showing for snowfall. We're looking at anywhere in those grays under 1 inch to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blues, 6 to 10 inches in the purples, and then 10 to 20 inches or more in those pinks. And we're looking at a good swath of that 2+ inch area that's all throughout portions of the Great Lakes, the northern plains, and into the interior northeast. And as we continue this forward, here's what the GFS model is showing. And you can see that heaviest snowfall is a little bit further east than what the European model was showing, but still, there's not too many major differences like we've seen in other with other storms. This is going to be fairly, I think probably by tomorrow we're going to have a really good handle of what will happen. So don't expect something like what we saw with Winter Storm Gale, where there's so many changes just before the system. We're not going to see something like that just because the system isn't shaping up the same way. We have one low pressure that we know where it's going to go. It's going to go to the north. The only thing that we really have to figure out is how fast does that cold air come in, and how heavy can that snowfall get, and can it really accumulate by that point. Now, here's the maximum wind gusts with this event, because this definitely will be a wind maker, and you can see this is in knots, so it's not in miles per hour. You would actually have to add a couple to get to miles per hour, and you're looking at maybe closer to 55 to 60 knots along the coast, along the coastal northeast coast, where you're looking at maybe 65 miles per hour if you were to convert this over. I don't think they'll be that strong. You could see a couple 65, 70 mile per hour gusts in isolated locations, but I think for the majority of people, it's going to be closer to 50 miles per hour, but still, it's going to be a very, very windy event. And back into the Ohio Valley, you're also dealing with some gusts closer to 40 or 45 miles per hour if this model were to be correct. Here's what the upper air looks like, and here's what the jet stream looks like, because this is also going to be important. So here's your system back through here. This would be by December 22nd on Tuesday. Now, here would be by Wednesday, and we see that trough digging further and further to the east. Now, here would be by Thursday, Christmas Eve, and then here would be by Christmas, and we have a huge trough into the eastern United States. Now, now we have a big trough into the eastern United States, and that's what's going to allow some of that very cold air to dip down further and further to the east. Now, also something with that cold air, we're going to have some precipitation that might freeze over, and that's going to be a big issue. We see that we have 1 to 3 inches of rainfall in a lot of these areas, and if we look at your temperatures, here to be by Wednesday, here's by Thursday, and we're dealing with some much colder air for the northern plains, and then here to be by Friday, December 25th, which would be Christmas, and we're looking at that sharp cold front moving by. So you're going to go from probably 50 to around 30 or 20 degrees in a matter of a couple of hours, and then as we get to the day after Christmas, it's much cooler for much of the eastern United States. So you could be dealing with a rapid freeze overnight. Any standing water is going to freeze over overnight. So definitely apply some rock salt and just spread it about, because you probably will be dealing with a major icing event. Even though you're not going to see a lot of freezing rain, it's going to be what happens after with that rapid freeze. That probably will be a bigger deal. Now, we also have a severe weather component to this. Now, this would be for Wednesday into Thursday morning, and we're looking at a marginal risk for a lot of these areas from southeasternmost Texas into Florida, and this is your day 3 outlook, so they might even upgrade this to a slight risk of severe weather as we get to probably the day 2 or day 1 outlook. So definitely keep your eye on this severe weather event, because it definitely could be a big one. Now, here's what the chances of severe weather are, and they're 5%. That sounds very low, but when it's 3 days out and they put out a outlook like this, you definitely want to pay attention, especially because it's the winter time. You're not used to severe weather events as much in this time period, so definitely just keep your eye on it, and I will be definitely keeping my eye on it, and I'll check it every once in a while. Now, here's your CAPE, and this is your convective available potential energy, and this is showing you how much energy you have available, and we definitely do have some amount of energy, probably 200 to 500 joules per kilogram, so that is some amount. You could see some thunderstorms pop up with that amount. It's not going to be a huge thunderstorm, but definitely you could see a couple of rumbles of thunder here and there. And then here's your relative humidity, and we definitely have a lot more moisture, and we do definitely have a lot of moisture that would definitely be able to produce some convective activity in the form of thunderstorms, and potentially you could see a couple rumbles of thunder here and there. Now, here's your wind shear as well, and you can see over the southern United States, you do have a lot of wind shear, which would definitely help with more of that convective activity, and wind shear usually helps to make bigger thunderstorms, so that could definitely help out with the thunderstorms, and definitely it will be something that you want to keep your eye on. Now, here's my forecast for the snowfall outlook from this storm, and this is, again, only for the northwest and the north central United States. We'll break this down for you, but probably by tomorrow we'll have the one for the Great Lakes and into the northeast, where it covers more of the full storm for you guys. So this is just going to be for the first half of the storm, going through Thursday morning, which would be Christmas Eve in the morning hours, and we're looking at some mountain snow for a lot of these areas in those higher elevations, of course, probably closer to 6 to 12 inches of snowfall in many of those mountain tops, although a couple areas could definitely get closer to 2 or 3 feet of snowfall, especially as you get into Washington and Oregon and the Cascades. You guys could definitely see quite a bit of snowfall out of this one. Here's that under an inch area, or basically a coating to a dusting, or maybe a little bit more of snowfall in some of these areas, and that covers a lot of the Rockies. And then moving through the northern plains, that's where you're looking at least some snowfall through Thursday morning. And then here's your 1 to 3 inch area, and this is added on to whatever you've seen already. And we're looking at maybe some more snowfall over an inch or two for portions of Wyoming, Montana, into the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, and then through Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. And a lot of that snow in Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, as well as for northeastern Minnesota, will be lake effect enhanced. So you could definitely see some higher totals locally, depending on exactly where those bands of snow set up. Here's that 3 to 6 inch area, and you can see some pockets for portions of Montana and Wyoming there, as well as some more for portions of the Dakotas and through Minnesota, Wisconsin, and into the UP of Michigan, where again you could see 3 to 6 inches, but probably closer to 4 to 6 inches in a lot of those areas. And then 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. You might even push closer to 13 or 14 inches in portions of Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, but generally it's a 6+ inch amount for much of the upper Great Lakes, especially the western upper Great Lakes. Those areas could definitely get quite a bit of lake effect. Some models putting out out 20 inches of lake effect from this in some areas in northern Wisconsin. We'll have to see about that. It's definitely a possibility, but I think the amounts will be lower. Sometimes the models do like to overestimate some of that snowfall when it comes to these lake effect events. So definitely we'll have to watch it, and it's pretty much you have to forecast it based on what the radar looks like. So lake effect can definitely be one of those more challenging things to forecast. Now, if you do want a personal forecast, or if you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and I'll be answering you guys within about an hour or two of you posting it. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.